Morning, all, and welcome to another great season without a Stanley Cup. And today, the decision I made this decision a couple days ago. I made this board up a couple days ago. On Friday night, being a crazy, wild individual that I am, I started making up boards for videos that I did yesterday and now this morning. And this is one I made up because it's a very interesting scenario that we present, and I did this with my replacement for the power rankings yesterday, which went pretty well. So I'm looking forward to doing other videos of that nature. The idea that the best team always wins the Stanley Cup is a romantic, wonderful idea, but sometimes a team wins a Stanley Cup by being hot. Sometimes a team misses out on a Stanley Cup, not because they're not great, but because it's just that little bit greater. And for the Philadelphia Flyers in 1976, they were coming off having won it in 74 and 75. So 1975-76 season would have made them officially a dynasty if they'd won it. But there was a rise of another dynasty on the way, and of course it's Montreal, because it always seemed to be Montreal in this period in time and prior to that. 51, 13, and 16 was the record for the Philadelphia Flyers that season. 118 points. That is an excellent season by any measure, and we'll go through their months and all that, but they would have been overshadowed a bit because Montreal was at 58, 11, and 11. Yeah, 127 points, so 9 points ahead. The thing is, come playoff time, things tend to even out. We know that there's that whole President's Trophies curse, and of course the President's Trophy wasn't around in the 70s, so it's not really an issue right there. But the Cup winners, they would have had a chance to have their dynasty. And if they'd won their third straight, they would have had it. And of course, they went to the Stanley Cup final in 1980. They went to the Stanley Cup final in 85. They went to the finals in 87. There are any number of points where, as a Flyers fan, you can look and go, man, almost. Pretty close. And so with this current batch of Flyers that we're seeing coming up now, and with the team they've put together, I think there's another Stanley Cup final run on the way, which would be the first since 2010, which, again, they get close. They do, and they put up a pretty good fight. The Philadelphia Flyers are capable of doing that. They just need to get back over that hump. They haven't been over since 1975. So to start the 75-76 season in October, they're 7-1-2. Excellent record. November, 9-2-4. December, 6-3-2. January, they're 8-4-2. And then in February, they get better. So one thing that we know from recent history is that teams that win the Stanley Cup traditionally do better at the end of the season. They're teams that are hot going into the playoffs. Very often are ones that you'll see win Stanley Cups. They're 10-0-4 in February, 9-2-2 in March, and 2-1 in April going into the playoffs. So they were 11-3-2 over the last 2 months of the season. If you count February, then that's 21-3-6. That's a pretty solid record. So for the Philadelphia Flyers, everything looks good. And if you look at their home record, they only lose 2 in regulation at home the entire season, 36-2-2. That's a pretty happy bunch in Philadelphia. That's a ticket, that's a season ticket base that's pretty happy that they go out and in 40 games they see 2 losses and 2 ties. On the road, a little bit of a different story, 15, 11, and 14. But still, at home, they're almost unbeatable. Now, when it comes through to the playoffs, the first round against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this would have been a Toronto Maple Leafs with guys like Darryl Sittler, Lanny McDonald, etc., pretty tough challenge there. They actually win that series in 7. Then they go on against the Boston Bruins. The Bruins of the mid to late 70s, still pretty excellent, and they beat them in 5, which means they meet up with the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens had on their roster Guy Lafleur, Steve Shutt, Pete Mahovlich, Jacques Lemaire, Yvon Cournoyer, Larry Robinson, Bob Gainey, Serge Savard, and in net, Ken Dryden. Yeah, this is a stacked team that the Flyers find themselves up against, and of course, they get swept aside. So they lose 4-3 in Game 1, 2-1 in Game 2, 3-2 in Game 3, and 5-3 in Game 4. It's a sweep, but they only lose 3 of them by 1 goal and 1 of them by 2. It is close. They just can't quite get over the hump against a Montreal team that's on its way to its own dynasty and to winning some Stanley Cups in a row. Now, on this team, this is one of the strongest Flyers teams we ever saw. Bobby Clarke, 30 goals, 89 assists, 119 points. The 89 assists really stand out. We talk about scoring in the 80s. Scoring was pretty high in the late 70s as well. Bill Barber, 50 goals, 62 assists, 112 points. Big part of the reason that he's in the Hall of Fame. He's on the Broad Street Bullies. He gets that 50-goal season that year, and he did put up a lot of points during that period. Reggie Leach, 61 goals, 30 assists, 91 points. And Leach's numbers actually were pretty good throughout that era. Oris Kindrachuk, 26 goals, 49 assists, 75 points. Gary Dornhofer, 28 goals, 35 assists, 63 points. Mel Bridgman, who had been a number 1 draft choice, 23 goals, 27 assists, 50 points for Bridgman. And Selesky, 21 goals, 26 assists, 47 points. So a lot of scoring depth there and a lot of scoring overall. 1,970 penalty minutes. Yeah, the Flyers, they were still an intimidating team. That's almost 2,000 penalty minutes over an 80-game season. That's a lot. And then in net, you had Wayne Stevenson, 40 wins, 10 losses, 14 ties, and a .908 save percentage. Bernie Parent, only 6-2-2 during the regular season, .907 save percentage. It was a back injury in training camp that took Parent out for the year. So for most of the season, it's Stevenson and net, and then Parent comes in, and during the playoffs, they kind of split starts. But Philadelphia comes up short against the Montreal Canadiens, and that close to being a dynasty. That close. So yeah, in terms of seasons that you almost become that next level of dynasty that we're still talking about years and years and years later, they were close. Getting to their 3rd Stanley Cup final in 3 years is impressive. But again, Philadelphia just comes up short because they faced an all-star team in the Montreal Canadiens. There's a lot of Hall of Famers there. There's a lot of Hall of Fame talent. So you can't blame them. You can't blame them. And again, one thing I talked about in yesterday's video on best teams that don't win the Stanley Cup, sometimes you have a really good lineup that should and might, maybe, but you come up against a dynasty. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support throughout this difficult time. And hey, remember, stay home as much as you can. Stay safe as well, of course, as much as you can. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe like I said. I will talk to you guys again soon.